This is Bible Q&A, and we have a question. Haha. Okay, so in the chat room, I get this one. John chapter 12, verse 40 says, God has blinded someone's eyes. Can you explain that? What I'd like to know is why God blinds them to keep them from understanding. It's counterintuitive, isn't it? Why would God do that? John 12, 40 is actually a quote of Isaiah chapter 6. But let's read all of the surrounding verses around John 40 first to kind of get an idea of what's going on here. When Jesus had taught these things, he departed and hid himself from them. Though he had done so many signs before them, they still did not believe in him, so that the words spoken by the prophet Isaiah might be fulfilled. Lord, who has believed what he heard from us, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? Therefore they could not believe, for again Isaiah said, He has blinded their eyes and hardened their heart, lest they see with their eyes and understand with their heart and turn, and I would heal them. What? It goes on to say, Isaiah said these things because he saw his glory, that is God's glory, and spoke of him. Nevertheless, many, even of the authorities, believed in Jesus, but for fear of the Pharisees, they did not confess it, so that they would not be put out of the synagogue. For they loved the glory that comes from man more than the glory that comes from God. Now, how about this Isaiah 6 thing? Because whenever the Bible quotes the Bible, it's always good to go back and see what that's coming out of. Because where that quote is coming from can tell us a lot about why John is using it in his gospel to describe this situation of people who believe in Jesus but aren't committed enough to the idea of following him to actually step up and do that. So in Isaiah 6, the relevant part actually starts here. It's when Isaiah is receiving his commission to be a prophet. Like God is specifically calling Isaiah to go and preach a message and be a prophet to Israel. So it starts out in verse 8. I heard the Lord ask, is there anyone I can send? Will someone go for us? I'll go, I answered, send me. Then the Lord told me to go and speak this message to the people. You will listen and listen, but never understand. You will look and look, but never see. The Lord also said, make these people stubborn. Make them stop up their ears, cover their eyes, and fail to understand. Don't let them turn to me and be healed. Then I asked the Lord, how long will this last? And the Lord answered, until their towns are destroyed, their houses deserted, their fields are empty, and I have sent them far away, leaving their land in ruins. If there is only a tenth of the people left, even they will be destroyed. Well, God is saying, you know what? No mercy, no second chances. Punish them. And I'm sending you to make sure that they know that there's nothing they can do. And indeed, I'm even sending you to make sure that it happens. Doesn't sound like a very merciful and loving God. Doesn't sound like the God we learned about in Sunday school. Well, there's one issue here that's especially at work in John chapter 12. That it's there, but if you're not looking for it, you'll miss it. And the best way I can describe this is to give an example from real life. Have you ever tried to warn somebody about something they were about to do and they didn't listen? Have you ever seen anybody reject either sound advice or something that was a fact because they didn't want to hear it, or accepting that fact or that advice would have contradicted or proven them wrong on something that they were like really committed to, you know? And you could come up with any number of examples. Any number of examples you could come up with. You know, there's all kinds of stuff out there that people want to believe. And that's really what we're getting at here. What's true and what people want to believe. So in John chapter 12, when it says, He has blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts, lest they see with their eyes and understand with their heart and turn, and I would heal them. God is acknowledging the fact that without his direct intervention, these people are not going to become true followers of Jesus Christ. And the fact is that God loves and respects humanity so much that he is going to allow us to make that decision for ourselves, which means that if somebody chooses to reject Jesus, God accepts their decision. Now, God's never going to stop trying to reach that person. God's always going to give them more opportunities. But at the end of the day, they still make a choice. And it is the most important choice we ever get to make, obviously, because it decides everything about our future existence. But God will let it go if a person is so set on doing what they want to do that they're not going to come to God, period. God will let it go. And that's what we see at work here. What we see are people who aren't going to be changed because they're stuck in their own course. We see something similar to that in Romans 1, where it talks about how some people were so sinful that God gave them over to their sin. You know, a lot of people say, what does that mean? God gave them over, God let them sin? Yes. Think about it. If we have real choice to decide, to really decide, Jesus, I want you to come into my heart and I want you, to take over my life and to lead me and to tell me what to do. You're the boss, not me. If we have the capability of making that decision, then we have the capability of making the opposite decision, which is, I don't want you, I want nothing to do with you, get away from me, Jesus. And God honors both decisions. So rejecting Jesus means exactly that, being given over. And we blind ourselves. But God, being all-powerful, has to allow us to do that. So, in a sense, God is blinding us. So what's happening here is, by using this quote from Isaiah, John is trying to point out that these people who weren't really following Jesus, who believed in him but didn't have the guts to stand up to the religious leaders and actually follow him, because as he says, for they loved the glory that comes from man more than the glory that comes from God. They were so concerned about what people thought, they didn't care what God thought, that is a result, that their blindness is a result of that decision and God allowing that to take place. Why? Because it was part of God's plan for Jesus. At the end of the day, Jesus was never going to be, king. He was never going to succeed because Jesus had to die on the cross. That was the plan. That's how it was supposed to work. And so we see that playing out here. And John is saying, even in spite of the rejection of the gospel, even in spite of these people not following Jesus, we still see God in control, God allowing this to happen because it was moving things forward in the way that God intended them to move forward. Joe says in the chat room, that's kind of funny because it constricts Calvinism, at least in part. I'm not sure what you mean by constricts, maybe contradicts. Now that's funny, yes, because Calvinism kind of gets into that. I am saying here, the ultimate decision and everything, but, fact of the matter is, I will say it, I'm not a Calvinist. Not in the sense that, I say I'm a Calvinist. Do I believe that God has absolute authority? Yes, I do. Is God sovereign in that authority? Well, yeah. I mean, he made this place. He owns it. He runs it. That makes him sovereign de facto. As I've said many times before, I'm no final authority, okay? I'm not. Even if I got this crazy TV behind me with the microphone, and even if this is surrounded by Remedy Live's website or YouTube channel, that doesn't make me a final authority. By all means, talk to your pastors, talk to your youth pastors, talk to your parents, and see what they have to say too. Because I think part of forming an opinion means finding out what the people around you believe about it. And that is important because when you do that, you find out, more about not only just your church, but your family and where all these perspectives come from. It's important to talk to your parents about what you believe, just like it's important to talk to your pastors. But I understand at the same time that can be hard. That can be really hard. So, yeah, me personally, there are things that I admire in Calvinism. Maybe there are some things that I disagree with. That doesn't make me necessarily right or wrong. It just means that I'm bringing a different perspective. But yeah, kind of went off on a tangent there. But that's my answer. That's the way I see it working out. So I'll stick to that. As I said before, by all means, if you think it sounds fishy or weird or odd, go for it. Ask somebody else. That's fine. I don't want to be your final authority. Don't let me be the guy who decides everything that you think, because I'll be offended by that. You got to think for yourself. And thinking for yourself means getting a lot of perspectives. So like I said, talk to everybody. Annoy people. Anyway, so short answer. Why did God blind their eyes and harden their hearts so that they wouldn't see and turn so that he would heal them? It's because these people had already made a decision. They had already decided something. And what they had decided is exactly what John says in verse 43. They loved the glory that comes from man more than the glory that comes from God. It's the same problem that Isaiah 6 is talking about with God talking about Israel. It's almost the exact same problem. Israel desired things other than God. And they were set in that, and they weren't going to move. And God had decided that, it was time to punish Israel for that. And there wouldn't be any second chances. And God was just in that punishment. If you read the laws and commands they were supposed to live under, absolutely just. There was no arguing there. So, that's my answer to the question. If you want to talk to me more about this, you can email me at clint@remedylive.com. You can always drop Bible Q&A questions at remedylive.com/questions. Fill out the form there, designate it to go to Bible Q&A or the Pulse. I'd prefer Bible Q&A, but it's not the end of the world, and that will get it straight to me. Let's get to some music. Music! Shane and Shane is on now with Without You. Without You. This sounds better. This song is called Without You by Shane and Shane. I can't talk. It's right here on Remedy Live.